Hello and welcome to Salute. I'm your host, Bob Peters, and we're having a little bit of a history lesson, for me anyway. I didn't know too much about merchant mariners, but so now I have Harvey and Ed with me, and I want to welcome you to the show. There's a lot of people who don't know too much about the organization, and first I'd like to know a little bit about you. So Harvey, would you tell me about yourself, where you're originally from, and how long were you a merchant mariner?
Yes, my full name is Morris Harvey, and I was actually born in Lady Lake in 1927, so that makes me 88 years old. And I got into the Merchant Marine in 1945 after I graduated from high school, and I was served for 5 years till 1949. The only trip I really made that was part of World War II that went into any kind of hazardous situation was the first trip I made went into the Mediterranean. And even though the war in Europe was over, it was full of mines. So we had a mine watch continuously while we were in there, and we actually sighted 2 mines that were floating nearby, and they were reported. So it took maybe a year or more to clean up the Mediterranean so it was safe to go in there, although, well, safe for normal travel. But I served for 5 years.
And Ed, you served.
I'm from Rochester, New York. I ran away to sea when I was 14. I was a stowaway, workaway my first trip. And then when they caught up to me, brought me back. And then I ran away again later, a few years later. And then I finally joined the Merchant Marine, went out to Sheepshead Bay in '44, and then sailed from 44 until I retired in 1995. I was born in 1925 in May, so that makes me 90, and went to sea with the Merchant Marine, with the Army Transport, and with the Military Sealift Command, and held every position on a ship right up to the captain. Then I even had some shoreside positions. I was the Assistant Safety Director for MSC up and down the East Coast, and I was a damage control instructor, and did some training films, and was in training as well, and then went to sea as for the rest of my life until I retired in '95.
14 years old, you were a stowaway? You were a rascal, weren't you? Yeah. Morris, would you like to tell me a little bit, tell our viewers a little bit more about the Merchant Mariner, how this, I understand it predates the Coast Guard and the Navy.
Yes.
And from my understanding, it is now under the Department of Transportation, correct?
That's correct. It was formed in 1775, and we've been in every conflict, involved in every conflict supporting the military that the United States has been involved in. Even in some that we weren't directly involved in, Ed can tell you more about this, but a few of them we were helping the United Nations with our merchant ships to transport materials and personnel. So we've always been supportive of the military. In 1936, they passed a Maritime Act of 1936, and that spelled out that the Merchant Marine was to be an auxiliary of the Navy or the military during conflict, and that the Merchant Marine should be maintained. And when I say Merchant Marine, we refer to the crews and the ships combined. That's a singular word. And so the Merchant Marine was to be maintained, the ships and the men trained to support the military according to the projections that the military had for protecting the United States safety. Mm-hmm. Today, we have the basis for the Merchant Marine is actually the Jones Act that was passed in 1936, I think it was. But that requires that all cargo transported between American ports is to be on American ships, American-built ships, American flag ships, owned by American citizens and manned by American crews. So if we did not have that law, we would have foreign flags running up and down our rivers and in and out of our ports more than we do today. All the cruise ships our foreign flags because they only pick up our passengers in our port, and then they go to other ports that are foreign. We have there are other laws that have been put into effect. They have the emergency fleets that are, I think there's about 54 ships that are actually active in support of under the Navy that are supporting the military around the world. And there are some more. I think last I heard there were about 21 ships that are strategically positioned around the world, and they have supplies sufficient to supply military force invasion up to 90 days. So we're always out there. We just never get any recognition for it.
Well, that's true. You know, as I said before, I really knew nothing about the merchant marine.
Yes.
And so I went on the computer and I learned a whole lot about you guys. And the fact, and my wife did ask me a question. She says, well, they're all private ships. And I says, yeah. She says, well, what happens when they went to war? He says, well, they automatically got involved in the war effort. And she says, well, what happens when the ship blows up? What if the guy's out the money? I said, well, there was insurance, I guess, for the owners of the ships, right?
Yeah.
Some wartime insurance they had. So because all the ships are really privately owned, but they are capable of becoming military vessels in times of war. Am I right?
Well,
Yes.
the
But remember, the men's wages stop when that ship gets sunk,
Yeah.
and they have to wait to get transportation back home, and they're lucky if they can get good transportation back, and so on and so forth. You see, the interesting thing about a merchant mariner, if there's a war, he's there no matter what. Now, you take in my instance, I was in 7 of them, and from starting out with World War II, of course. And this it so happened that we needed the ships, we needed the people to get them over there, and the only people that were available were the merchant mariners. If you look closely on that picture of George Washington going across Delaware,
Yes, sir.
that's me on the back there with that steering oar.
You know, I don't quite believe that. I know you did a long career, a great career, but I find that one a little hard to believe. But I did read that too, what you said about during World War II and stuff. These guys are out on a ship blows up, you're in the water, you're out of job.
That's right.
We were civilian volunteers, and another unique thing about the Merchant Marine is that when you sign on a ship, you sign articles, and that's your commitment to make that trip. Otherwise, you can be charged with desertion and so forth. But the point I'm trying to make is you're a civilian volunteer on every trip you make. It isn't like the Navy or the other services where you sign up for a 3-year period.
Mm-hmm.
You're signed up for a trip.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little about you, since you were there with the World War II and everything.
Well, I made a few trips across convoy-wise, and I happened to be in England on D-Day, and so on and so forth, and well, I just happened to be at the right time in the wrong place, I guess, as I say it, but I enjoyed every bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like the Greek Civil War, we took horses and mules into Greece to help them fight their war. During Korea, we took Turkish troops into Korea. Then after the war is over, all these immigrants that ran out of Poland and these different countries, they had no place to go, so they wanted to come to America. Well, we took shiploads of them to America. In fact, we took them all over the place, and under the auspices of an international organization. So we were very much involved, and to a degree we were recognized, but I don't think we were recognized as well as we should have been.
Well, I agree with you. I really do. After reading what I read about what the service to our country, I don't think you really got the proper recognition either.
Um,
Let me ask you something. I'm taking a shot here. The Frozen Chosen Reservoir, do you know about the ships that threw all the stuff all overboard to rescue a bunch of South Koreans so they could escape the North? Do you know about that ship? It was a merchant.
I wasn't
ship.
involved in
The
that.
Meredith Victory?
Yeah, I think that's what it was called. Yeah.
I think you're talking about the Meredith Victory. Well, the Meredith Victory did, and also another thing, it brought 14,000 people out of North Korea down to
That's
South Korea.
it. That's it.
In fact, I have a picture of it. My ship was behind the ship that did that, and all their down on the dock, and I've got a picture of that.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
The captain on there, he became a friar, became a religious guy, because that really affected him. Yeah, that was the Meredith Victory, know it well.
Yeah, we just did a thing with the Korean veterans, Chapter 169 here, and Hu Young, I can't remember her whole name, Hu Young Kennedy. She represents the South Korean government. She's actually a Canadian, but she came and gave the medals to the Korean soldiers. And my uncle was up there at the Frozen Chosen. He's a member of the chapter now. But she was telling us all about the ships that threw all the stuff over us and rescued all those people, how appreciative she is of what you guys did to help save her people. And because of what they did, she is still alive. She's alive today because, you know, it was her grandmother they helped rescue.
Well, the short time that they were on there were 7 babies born on that ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, any particular ship that you served on that you want to talk about?
Well, I had the first roll-on, roll-off ship, the U.S. naval ship Comet. See, I started out Merchant Marine, then I went to Army Transport. And then the Army turned over 220 ships over to the Navy, and that became Military Sealift Command. So I did with the Army and the Navy, so I put in 44 years, which is Uncle Sam. And then the rest of my time was with the Merchant Marine. So I'm under Social Security as well as civil service. So that all worked out fine for me as well. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time in the port of Port Canaveral. In fact, that magazine, I don't know if you saw it or not.
I didn't get a chance to see it.
Wrote a pretty nice article about me there. And we supported the submarines and different things militarily until, well, there's one ship is still coming in, but now they're pretty well slowed down.
Mm-hmm. So Morris, tell me a little bit, why did you join? Did you tell me why you joined?
I was one of those people, that's another thing about the Merchant Marine in World War II. President Roosevelt and the Secretary of War realized that they could not man the ships that they needed through the Navy. In fact, the Navy had some Liberty ships, which was the main ship that was built in World War II. There were 2,700 plus ships, Liberty ships built. But they would put 200 or more men on a ship like that. We ran that ship with 42 or 43 men. Wow. Then they would put another 15, 20, 25 armed guard from the Navy to man the guns, which usually was not enough people. So the Merchant Marine actually supported the Navy Armed Guard when they're under attack. So where was I going with that?
I'm just, you know, in doing the history, checking out the history of this, I learned a lot about the Merchant Marine and like the British used to knock you off during, you know, the Revolutionary War. They would go sink the ships, you know, and then of course in World War II, you guys paid a heavy price.
700 ships in the North Atlantic alone.
We had over 9,000 men killed,
or
12,000 wounded.
Because you were targets of the U-boats.
Yes.
They wanted to stop that supply line going to Britain.
That's correct.
Well, the U-boats, they would sit off the shore and the lights are on the shore, and the people would sit on their chairs watching the ships getting sunk. We had a heck of a time trying to get the different places to turn their lights off so they wouldn't silhouette the ships. So
I can remember that because I didn't go to sea until 45, and here in Florida, we knew there was oil along the beaches, and we knew ships were being sunk, and there was a big argument among the business people that they didn't want to turn out the lights.
Yeah.
And it took a couple of years. I think it was 43 before they finally started turning out the lights.
That's right.
One of the problems there was that the federal government didn't want to release information about all the ships being sunk out there. They didn't want to discourage the public.
The war effort, yeah.
So a lot of that was kept secret, but we knew it was there because the evidence was there. We just didn't know how bad it was.
I read about one ship that was sunk in the mouth of the Mississippi River by the Gulf of Mexico. A merchant marine ship was sunk there because the Germans, you started going out that way because you were getting so many sunk that they tried to bring them out through there, and they were blowing them out of the water there too.
I live in Citrus County now, and I did some research on the people from Citrus County that were killed in World War II, and it turns out the first citizen from Citrus County that was killed was a merchant mariner, and he was a boatswain on a tanker coming out of the Mississippi River. They were only 20 miles out, and the submarine, it was total loss.
Yeah,
all 32 men on board were
Well, I
gone.
have a chart on my wall at the house. It's about that long, about that wide, of the Caribbean area where all the ships are sunk. It shows just outside of Trinidad, there's just 11 tankers alone sunk right there.
Wow. Yeah, there were tankers, Liberty ships, and what was the other
Victory.
one?
They got into
Victory, yeah.
Victor
They
ships
came
and then the
after.
C-type ships.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to bring out here is the recognition and the benefits. When the war ended, there was a big discussion in Washington that we should get benefits. There were bills introduced. Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, in fact, when he signed the GI Bill for the military services, he told Congress, I expect you to sign a similar bill for the merchant marine. Well, he died, and the idea died with him, the way it looks. And for many reasons, a lot of people, it's hard to put your finger on it. But we were not given any benefits after the war until 1988. I'm a national vice president of American Merchant Marine Veterans. It was formed in 1984 to try to get benefits, and this is 40 years after the war's over. It took until 1988, and that was a result not because they wanted to do it, but because a court found that they were not treating us fairly and equally, and they told them to reconsider, and they turned around and made us veterans. But one of the things they did, they put many restrictions on it. They did not include our training time. They only included the actual time on a ship out of port. They did not include the people that served beyond August 15th when Japan decided to surrender. From August 15th till the end of 1946 was the actual official end of World War II. But those men did not get veteran status until about 9 years later.
Yeah.
In 1996, I think it was. And they only got the privilege of being buried in a national cemetery.
Yeah, and getting a grave marker.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
Let me correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, those guys, World War II, that's where the act went. But after World War II, they don't get anything.
that's correct. We've tried.
Unfortunately.
We've tried twice. There's a board under the Air Force, Secretary of the Air Force,
That's where they make
that's
the
supposed to
mistake.
make a decision on that. We've made two submittals to them, trying to prove that we were there. And that's funny because they knew we were there, but they're saying the burden of proof is on the applicant. And they've rejected both of our applications at this
Well,
point.
hopefully that'll come about
We're
in the
working on
future.
that.
Why don't we hold this flag up? Hey, pass it over this way, one end to me. Yeah, that's it. And you get a nice photo there. In peace and war, Merchant Marine, United States, 1775, beautiful flag. Well, I want to thank you two gentlemen for coming on the show. We're going to say goodbye, and this is how we do it. Please join me. To all our veterans out there, our active military and their family, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.